Turn in your Bibles to the book of Ecclesiastes. Only Judges 11 in about 6 or 7 pages of notes. Judges 11. But Ecclesiastes, very strange book of the Bible. And I mean that in every good way possible, but it's not like any other book of the Bible, to be sure. Book of Ecclesiastes. I've had several different titles for this message over the years, and this is one that I really feel necessary to break out once in a while when I've got a young man about to leave here. And so I'm not preaching at Loyal, but I do have him in mind as we look at this subject. The title of the message is on the board behind me. It's going to have 6 points. It should say experimenting in the laboratory of life. You guys, they call it experimenting with drugs, experimenting with sex, experimenting with all kinds of things. And the idea of the word experiment is that of a scientist. And a scientist tries to mix chemicals or electricity or whatever it is in some combinations heretofore never done before and try to see what the outcome will be. The problem is most of you already know what the outcome of your experiments will be. Ecclesiastes, please. You already know up here where some of your decisions, some of your experiments were going to end up. For one, that a rant's like this, but if I were to ask for a show of hands, you know you have brothers, you have sisters, you have cousins, you have dads or uncles, you have friends who have already shown you in spades what's going to happen to you if you continue experimenting with some of the things you've been experimenting with. It's going to be no big surprise. You're going into this thing with your eyes wide open, most of you. When you were 2 or 3 or 4 and you were learning about falls and trips and burns and all of that and traffic and bicycles and training wheels, okay, you had an excuse for the injury that you suffered. No, not from here at this age up anymore. And we adults are certainly without excuse. So I'd like to talk to you about a man named Solomon who's been there and done that, and he did the most comprehensive experiments in life possible. We saw a science lesson from the Bible this morning, a little cosmology lesson. And the fact of the matter is, gentlemen, ladies, there is a man in the Bible who has more experience in the experiments of life, or the laboratory of life, scientifically speaking, than anyone else. And I want to see if we can draw some lessons from him this morning. There's a saying that the standard lesson of history is what? That men never learn from history. The first lesson of history is that men don't learn from history. Now, I hope that at the very least we could say the standard lesson of history is that few people learn from history, so that today there may be some exceptions in the room here. It's dumb to repeat your own mistakes or anyone else's mistakes. Would you agree with that? Who wants to make avoidable mistakes? Why not learn by observation rather than personal experience if possible? If you see me in the welding shop and I just lose my mind, which I do because I'm in 40 places at once, and I pick up a piece of metal that I just cut with a cutting torch, and you hear me squeal like a pig, and you start smelling what smells like a roasted calf, you don't need to pick up that piece of metal, do you? No. Sit back and laugh at me if you want, but don't touch it. Who would be dumb enough to say, I don't believe you. I think you're lying. You're screaming. You smell like roasted pig for no reason. And pick it up. You wouldn't do it. You see somebody see Barrett fall off of a cliff? He's the last one to fall off that cliff. Amen? I ran over a boy's foot once, and now I can't even. Brother Adam had some boy jumping by the left rear tire of my truck, and I nearly had a heart attack because I already broke a kid's foot right there once. See, we're supposed to learn from history, especially the painful lessons. But we're about to find out that we don't do that. The older you get, the more you'll appreciate the voice of experience. As a kid, you don't typically do that. There's no conversations I'd rather have than talking to older people about life as they saw it and they know it. Your mom says you shouldn't hang out with that crowd. And instead of thinking, wow, my mom is 35, 45, 55 years of age, and she has some wisdom, and she's got some real heartaches, and I should listen to her. You say, what do you know, Mom? And you go bullying past that advice that you got. Your parents say don't ever drink alcohol or take drugs or get alone in a car with that person, or they tell you work hard, get good grades, and go to school. Don't drop out of high school. All this advice given. And yet kids typically don't listen. Usually, guys, it's the voice of history trying to save your future. We've already made our mistakes. And so when we give you advice, we're not trying to be smarter than you, though we might be. We're trying to save your future with our past. We really are. There's another adage, and that is those who refuse to learn from the mistakes of history. How about your mistakes you made before you came here? And then you do them again here for 3 or 4 months. 5 months, 6 months, 7 months, 8 months. And try to do here what you did there. You know what you're a proof of? That those who refuse to learn from the mistakes of history are condemned to repeat them. Condemned. Ecclesiastes chapter 1. So, this morning, we're going to learn from the expert. I'm going to describe to you history's greatest king, wisest philosopher, richest and most powerful man in the history of civilization. His name is Solomon. Here's the one guy who in all areas of conversation, more than any man, can say, I've been there, I've done that. Don't you hate a know-it-all? Every time you turn around, yep, I've done that. Yep, I've done that better. Yep, I've done that twice as good. Here's the only man besides Jesus Christ who can truly say that. This man has done it all. He's been it all. Now, Solomon was the king of Israel about 1000 BC. So 3,000 years ago, we're going to get some pretty relevant advice. 6 pieces of advice that if you would be mindful, if you'll be the exception, men, ladies, if you'll be the exception and learn from the mistakes of others, learn from history, learn from the voice of experience and say, you know what? I don't need to touch that piece of metal. I don't need to jump off that cliff. I don't need to try that sin because I've already seen what it'll do. Let me ask you a question. Go to Ecclesiastes chapter 1, please. What would you do, young men, if you had all of the money, all of the time, and all of the power to do it, and no one could say diddly about it? What would you do today? No restrictions of money, no restrictions of time, no restrictions of power, and nobody can say words about it. Did I bring up a sin? I hope not. Solomon was that man. He's the king. He does what he wants. He has all the money in the world. He's the richest man ever to live. And no one can say diddly about what he does, and what he did was substantial. Throughout the book of Ecclesiastes, he did a little bit of everything. But can I ask you a question? Whether you thought of something sinful you would do, or something fun you would do, or something wholesome you would do, can I say this? Whatever it is you decide, you think would make you happy. You know why people kill themselves? They don't see that tomorrow they could be happy. There's no more light. There's no more belief, no more faith. Unless they have mental illness, which probably they do anyway a little bit. They don't believe in a happier future. They think their best days are behind them. I know something about every one of us in this room. All of us want to be happy. Now, you and I all have different ways we think they're going to accomplish that. Jesus is the one that says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Jesus utters you the formula for joy, but whatever is going on in your life, I know that everyone in this room, everyone out there in this world, and everyone from corner to corner of the globe, they would like to be happy that day. And that Solomon is no different. Solomon was in a search throughout his entire life for something. I'll give you a little hint. By the end of life, he finally figured out he already had it. Solomon was raised by King David, great Old Testament Christian, a man who loved the Lord, a man that was a man after God's own heart. He wrote the book of Psalms. And all those were practiced on young Solomon and all the other kids in David's family. All those Psalms we've heard. So King Solomon, when he was a little boy, sometime heard on his daddy's knee, the Lord is my shepherd. Hey, Solomon, the Lord is your shepherd too. And he heard all this stuff. How many of you guys were raised with the Scriptures? You were raised by someone who taught you some Bible. Raise your hand. This is getting more because Christians are finding out we're doing this. We never used to have any saved kids. So what you're going to find out is Solomon, like you, started off on the knee of a good dad who told him all these wonderful truths, and he ran from it year after year after year after year after year, and thankfully at the end of his life he came back to it full circle. You know, remember The Wizard of Oz? Some of you guys like that movie. One time, just because I was bored, I watched it 3 times in a row, back to back. I was in the military and I had a weekend off and I didn't have anything else to do, so I just watched it 3 times in a row trying to figure it out. You know what she did? She, at the end of the movie, the whole theme of the thing, she taps her heels together and says, there's no place like home. She tried to go all across the rainbow to find happiness because she was discontent at home. Discontent with her uncles, discontent with her naggy mother, discontent with the chickens and the pigs and the cows and the work. And she says, if I could just go somewhere to be happy, over the rainbow. And at the end, she's like, I want to go home. Anybody get that? I just want to go home. Home really was a good place for most of us. So I know Solomon, whatever experiments he's about to show us, all he really wanted was to be happy. Only he, unlike us, had no material limitations. He had more authority, more power than Alexander the Great, Napoleon, Genghis Khan combined. He was wiser than Plato, Aristotle, and Socrates ever thought possible. He was not only a king, but according to the Scriptures, he had a PhD level of education and knowledge in the following different industries. He was an inventor, a scientist, a historian, an explorer, a musician, a general, a military tactician. He understood art, agriculture, geology, physics, astronomy, medicine, and music. Spoke of all of them with eloquence. And he had the money to enjoy it all, and 1,000 women to share it with. So in his quest for happiness, Solomon literally tried it all. We're going to start in chapter 1. Let's pray. And here's my request, man. If you see something you already tried and it didn't work, you don't need to go back there. You already know what's broken, though. You already know what won't work. You already know what won't make you happy. You already know what will not put money in your bank account, security in your life, and keep your family tight together. You already know what's broke, boys. And if there's any doubt in your mind about anything else, he'll cover it. So why go out of here and leave here and pick up a hot piece of metal and burn your hand? Why do that? Unless you're just plain stupid. Ecclesiastes chapter 1. Father, please open our eyes to behold wondrous things out of thy law. I pray as we take just the next few minutes. I have nothing original to say, Lord, but you already said it. Solomon already told us what won't work. And what he tried to an extreme, into a level, into a depth, into a height and a breadth that none of us have the resources to do. Lord, I know these boys think there's a rainbow out there that's eluding them. That they can just break free from authority, break free from their parents, break free from rules. Somehow they'd be happy. And God, I hope they're starting to see that's just not true. Help us learn from Solomon as he experimented in the laboratory of life, and you allowed it to be recorded for our benefit. And I pray in Jesus' name, amen. Number one. First thing he did, we're in Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verse number 13. Let's read there. Well, let's start in verse 12. I, the preacher, interesting term, was king over Israel and Jerusalem. Watch now. I gave my heart. A lot of kids go to college. They don't give their heart to college. They don't give their heart to trade school. They don't give their heart to anything except sin. But Solomon says, when I poured myself into these things, I did it with all my heart and all my soul and all my strength. If the moment you got here, Max, yes, you still got hair. You won't by tomorrow. If you poured yourself into this with all your heart and all your soul and all your mind and all your strength like Liverpool has tried to do, buddy, the sky's the limit what you're capable of. He says here, he says, I gave my heart, watch now, to seek and to search out by wisdom. So he had a gift he started with. He started with a supernatural dose of wisdom. In other words, he had an advantage over all of us. He asked God. God says, you ask me what you want in order to be king. He says, do you want the life of your enemies? Do you want riches? Do you want power? And he goes, no, I really need wisdom to govern and rule all these people. And God says, because you've asked for wisdom, you didn't ask for power, didn't ask for money. He says, I'm going to give you wisdom above all men and everything else to boot. So she was handed the mental capacity to understand everything. By the way, if you had wisdom, you'd have plenty of money too. Watch what he says. He says, I gave my heart to seek out and search by wisdom. That was the God's gift given to him. Concerning all things done under heaven. There's every discipline and study known to man. He says, I want to know it all. Not to be a know-it-all, know it all. This sore travail hath God given to the sons of man to be exercised therewith, the learning of all these things. Keep reading. I have seen all the works that are done under the sun. And behold, all is vanity and vexation of spirit. That which is crooked cannot be made straight. He learned that. And that which is wanting cannot be numbered. He says, I communed with mine own heart, saying, Lo, I am come to great estate, and have gotten more wisdom than all they, cumulatively, by the way, that have been before me. He's not wiser than every man who ever lived. He's wiser than all men who've ever lived. Yeah. Cumulatively. You imagine how bad your brain would hurt knowing what he knows. You know what he learned? He says, I tried first of all, these are all going to start with an L to help you. Laboratory of life. Tried first learning. He took that wisdom and he began to apply it to studies. And the Library of Congress would be nothing. All the dictionaries. When I was a kid, I used to love learning. I loved reading. My wife, my mother, in 1971, I think, or 72, she bought the World Book Encyclopedia. How old was I? I was 8, 9 years old then. I read the whole thing, cover to cover. Started at 1. It's about that long. Okay? I read all of Webster's Dictionary. I went to my little public school. It's a small school, about like couch. I read every book in the library, like all of them. Our library wasn't that big, but there were hundreds of volumes. I love to read. I love to learn. To this day, the most frustrating thing to me, preachers, I'm going to die before I get to learn something else. I want to be a doctor. I want a political science degree. I'm a nut about politics. There's so many things I want to learn, and I'm not going to get a chance to do it. I'm reading 3 or 4 books at any given time. I understand what it's like to want to learn, but I don't understand what it's like to know everything and have the grief that comes with it. With much knowledge comes much grief. Sometimes, just being what they used to call fat, dumb, and happy is a pretty good way to be. Because the more you know, the more pain you feel. But they will tell you today, we're in the age of enlightenment, they will tell you need to get a college education. I don't argue with that. Moms and dads, I'm not speaking against college or university. 75% of all college degrees, the person who gets it never works in that industry or field. It's just billions of dollars thrown down a rat hole. They're just going to find themselves. When they get done with the 4-year degree, they found they're not whatever they went to school for. But even so, If you go to learn to be a doctor, a lawyer, a butcher, baker, candlestick maker, whatever it is, if while you're going to university, they talk you out of this, which is what a main education is about, talk you out of God, talk you out of absolutes, gets you to believe in relativity, so that you can have the morals of an alley cat and the hope of those who commit suicide. We live in an education explosion. With all our technological advances, we're no more advanced than we were before. Are PhDs happier than undereducated people? No. Are they? Will that bring you happiness? The most brilliant minds of our time gave us two damnable mistakes of modern thinking: Darwinianism, evolution, and Einstein's relativity. You came from a monkey and you don't know where you're going, and there's no purpose in life because you have no creator. Eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow you die. Life is too hard, blow your brains out. Why not? If you're just another monkey with no God to go to, what difference does it make? You're seeing in our country, you're seeing in England, you're seeing in Europe, the results of universities without God. You're seeing it. Do you know that all these universities were started at one time for the propagation of the gospel? Princeton, Yale, Harvard, Cambridge, all of those, Oxford, they all had the discipline of preaching as part of their curriculum. They all did. Not anymore. Not anymore. Look, if you will, Solomon figured out 3,000 years ago that all of his learning, notice what he says. He says, verse number 16, I communed with my own heart, saying, Lo, I am come to great estate, got more wisdom than all they that have been before me in Jerusalem. So if education was happiness, yet in my heart a great experience of wisdom and knowledge. And I gave my heart to know wisdom and to know madness and follies. You know what he got out of it? Verse 18, increased sorrow. Increased sorrow. If you go off to get an education before you know what you're doing on this planet, before you figured out your purpose, Revelation 4:11, bring honor and glory to your Creator, you're never going to become happy. Look, if you will, at the second one. Not only that, he tried learning. Notice this, after a little while, these come chronologically as far as I can tell in there. He tries learning at the end of knowing every discipline known to mankind, no subject he couldn't speak about. He is depressed. In fact, you're going to find out by the end of Ecclesiastes, it's not in this message, in another one I preach, you will find out that he's ready to kill himself. At the end of this experiment, he despairs of life. You know anybody ever despaired of life? Got to the point of giving up? Number two, he tries next laughter. This is interesting. He tries laughter. Turn, if you will, to chapter 2. Learning didn't do it, so he tries something else. He says in chapter 2, verse 1, I said in my heart, change of pace here, go to now. Let's try something else. I will prove thee. Experiment. What are proofs? You ever take geometry? Take science classes? They do proofs. He says, all right, I'm going to try something else. Here's a proof. I want to prove thee with mirth. Therefore, enjoy pleasure. And behold, this is also vanity. You know what he tries as an experiment in life? Just being happy for happy's sake. In other words, we're supposed to laugh because we're happy. We're not supposed to laugh to try to become happy. And buddy, there's a huge difference both in Solomon's day and in our day. The old saying is, ignorance is bliss. This guy has a heavy heart. His education has done nothing for him. He has long since wandered from the God of his childhood. Long since that he read and prayed and sang the hymns his daddy wrote. So think with me. You're supposed to laugh because you're happy, not in order to become happy. But he tries it the other way around. How many of you guys know what a sitcom is? Ask my wife how many sitcoms I watch. Ask my wife if I'd ever watched a sitcom.
Gilligan's Island?
Huh?
Gilligan's Island?
That's not a sitcom. Gilligan's Island is of the Lord. Okay. Because, maybe I'm ruined. And I realize, okay, how many guys think Raymond is funny? There's a show called Raymond. My mother loves Raymond. Probably nothing evil about that or this other Office or whatever. I'm not a total prude about television, but listen, when it says sitcom, I have to run away. Just because I read this right here. They've invented programs to take unhappy people who come home from life, to a bad marriage, to rough kids, to a job they hate. They sit down for 1 hour and turn on a situation comedy where people act and play and do stupid things to make them laugh. And when they get up, they're just as sad as they were before. The laugh is not lasting. It's not helpful. It doesn't do nothing but distract them for 1 hour. That's all it does. It distracts them. They're not laughing because they're happy. They're trying to laugh because they're not happy in life. And I'm not saying everybody who watches the sitcom is depressed. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying that's why. Listen, you ever heard of a court jester? That's what these guys had. These guys had comedians, just like we have stand-up comedians. So did King Solomon. And he says, give me the funniest guys with the best joke lines and get them dressed up with bells on their toes and feet and have them fall and slip and slam and do. And how many of you guys like Mr. Bean? He's pretty funny. If you call it a sitcom, I have to quit looking at him. But a comedian, his purpose is to bring levity to your life, to make you laugh. You with me? And sometimes that feels good. Trust me, I know. Sometimes you just need to. And I'm not criticizing the whole theory. I'm just saying as a solution to life, it will not work. Solomon literally hired comedians to come into his court and to dance and play and sing and do in order to bring him happiness, and it didn't work. Laughter for laughter's sake. It's probably why we all love kids, because kids are funny. Candid Camera lasted longer than almost anything in the world. It's because kids. Or they had a show they used to, when I was a kid, called Kids Say the Darndest Things. How many of you guys know what I'm talking about? And it's just, or what's the funniest home videos? I grant you, those are funny. But if that's all you've got, is you got to pop in one of those to be happy. And then when you're done, you're sad again. But you're a candidate for the next experiment. You're a candidate for the next experiment, because Solomon tried learning and it didn't do it. He thought an education would make him happy. He thought laughter would make him happy, and it won't. Not as a causal relationship. So he did exactly what some of you guys did. Now he goes to liquor. Oh, we got all kinds of inebriants today. I mean, back then they had liquor. They had, your 6%, 6-proof wine, and then you could have your stronger distilled stuff. And the purpose of liquor, verse number 3, you say, are you sure he did that? Yep, look at verse 3. What's next? Well, verse 2, he says of laughter, it's mad, it's crazy. It is. If that's your only source of happiness. Of mirth, watch this. What to do with it? What permanent healing did it bring you? What does it? Nothing. So he says, try again, back to the drawing board. He's back to experimenting in the laboratory. Watch what he does on verse 3, chapter 2. I sought in my heart to give myself to wine. Not to take a sip, which I don't do and don't think you should either. Okay, God asked me to give up that junk when I was 19. I did. Never touched it since. Haven't smelled it since. Don't want it. Never will. By God's grace. But listen, he didn't, just like everything else, he didn't just go become a doctor or a lawyer. He became all of them. He spent a bunch of money, I'm sure, on this, and now he gives himself to inebriation. Fine. I can't be happy with my life and my education. I can't be happy just laughing. I'm just going to get high. I'm just going to get drunk. I'm just going to drown out how I feel and how he felt. Why did he feel that way? He started off as a happy little boy with a Christian mom and dad who sang psalms to him, and he lived like every other little kid. And somewhere along the line, he walked away from God, walked away from the Word, walked away from his psalms and his daddy, and he started playing with life like a lost person does. You Christian kids don't have any excuse for that. Now watch. He says, I sought in my heart to give myself to wine. Totally give himself over. We call these drug addicts, alcoholics, guys who can't live without pot. You don't feel right without it. Well, buddy, I was on pain medicine for about 3 solid years with a busted up back. I understand not feeling right when you don't have something to stop your pain. But don't mean it is right. You guys gotta smoke dope to be happy. Well, here it is, right in your Bible. Here's the burning plate. You don't need to pick it up. He says this, watch. I saw in my heart to give myself to wine, yet acquainting my heart with wisdom. So he's trying to drink and drive. He's trying to drink and go to school, or drink and work, or smoke dope and function in society. Doesn't work. You already know it won't work. It won't. You'll never be the man you were meant to be, living an inebriated life. An altered consciousness. Won't work. Okay? Yet acquainting my heart with wisdom, and to lay hold on folly, till I might see what was the good for the sons of men, which they should do unto the heaven all the days of their life. What's he doing? He's experimenting. Liquor. Smartest man in the world. Tries alcohol. Today he would smoke pot. Today he would do pills. Today he would take crank or coke or meth or heroin or whatever. Whatever it takes to change his reality, overcome his sad, depressed senses. You know what he found out? It's, look at Proverbs 23 for a second. Hold this spot. Grab Proverbs 23. Because Proverbs he wrote as well. And we read Proverbs every day to learn from this man. He is our wisest counselor. You say, well, do you have PhD counselors here? Well, we do now, but we always have. We've always had an advisor who has 20 or 30 or 40 PhDs. His name is Solomon. And we sit at his feet every day. We get wisdom every day from him. We get advice from him. We listen to him. Look at there. He tried liquor. Look at Proverbs 23, verse 29. Stay with me. 23, 29. You there? Say amen. Amen. Turn those new pages easy. 23, 29. Who hath woe? A while ago, a preacher was asking us, who asked the question about where'd the rain come from? Where's the ice come from? We were like, God. Now, let's get a different answer. Who hath woe? Who has sorrow? Anybody here? You ever had any sorrow? You ever drowned in any sorrow? Who hath contention? That's fighting. How many of you guys had fighting at home? Come on, raise your hand. Who hath babbling? Slurred speech, saying stupid stuff. Who hath wounds without cause? Wake up in the morning and like, what in the world? How did I get that? Anybody been there? Who hath wounds without cause? Who hath redness of eyes? Anybody got stock in Visine to cover up your habits before? I never did drugs. My sin of choice as a kid I snuck around was Copenhagen. And my mother wonders why I like Oreos so much. And it was because Oreos, if my mother caught me chewing the snooze, I could spit the snooze out and pop in an Oreo, and she couldn't tell. I was chewing an Oreo. She'd like, she didn't get it. And I carried that on for about 6 years, bro. You guys did that with Visine, didn't you? Or something to cover up your breath. Some other way to lie. Look at the next verse. Who have redness of eyes? They that tarry long at the wine. Give yourself to it. They that go to seek mixed wine. Look not thou upon the wine when it is red, when it giveth this color, and the cup when it moveth the self aright. Alas, it biteth like a serpent. Who knows that? The man who gave himself to it. The richest, smartest, wisest man in the world who said, I'm tired of life. I'm sick of it. Nothing's working for me. I'm just going to get drunk and see how that goes. How long to do it? Months, weeks, years? I don't know. All I know is you don't need to try it. Because he already went further than you can, and it won't work. At the end of it, he said, it's vanity, vexation of spirit. It's going to bite you like a serpent. It will sting you like an adder. You wouldn't touch a snake if you knew it could hurt you. Why would you touch alcohol? Why? going to bite you just as bad. Why? Why even touch it? Now, I think it's a sin to drink. I believe that with all my heart. It's a sin to drink alcohol, moms and dads. Whether you believe that or not, it's a sin for me to drink it. There is no moderation in my life. You've seen me. I'm like, I'm all or nothing. And buddy, if I were to pick that up again, just wave goodbye, because all you'll see is my taillights. So are some of you. You can pretend it's okay, a little okay. Not you guys! You're not little okay type kids. You're all or nothing kids. No need for you to try it. It won't work. It's the devil's lie. Back to Ecclesiastes chapter 2, please. So he tries learning. He tries laughter. He tries liquor. None of that's working. So he sobers up. And he said, well, this isn't working. So he fortunately gets back out before he dies of an overdose. Alcohol poisoning, liver disease, liver damage, heroin overdose. Right? Like some of your friends. How many of you guys know somebody, you lost somebody you know to drugs, to alcohol, car crash. Me too. Lost 3 of my boys now to it. He sobers up, and he goes to work. Over here he was learning, supposedly to work, but he has all the money in the world, he doesn't really need to work. So over here he starts working. If I have an addiction, this is it. I'm a workaholic. I understand that. It's the most justifiable sin in the world that I know of. It's still a lack of priorities. It's still a false balance. To work when you should be playing, to work when you should be praying, to work when you should be spending time with your children or grandchildren. I understand this very, very well. And he goes to excess, like everything else, in labor. Look at chapter 2, verse 4. Well, I'm going to get back to Ecclesiastes. Are you there? Hey, chapter 2, verse 4. Now he's going to try another L. He says, so, verse 4, he sobers up and he says, I made me great works. Man, I like building stuff. Whether it's on a lathe or in a welder or out there on a hilltop we're going to build, or Bible study with a kid and I see notes in your Bible when they're done. I like doing something productive that you can see it stay behind. I'm an admirer of that verse that says, they rested from their labors and their works do follow them. You know what's cool, guys? Is if you set in motion something that's going to last after you're dead. Okay? Not a building for a building's sake, although that's kind of cool. But you set in motion something that's going to go on benefiting and blessing people year after year after year after you're dead and gone. That's why raising Christian kids is such a blessing. Well, that's what he says. But see, Solomon's not going about life like that. He's trying to become happy. You know that old song says, I sing because I'm happy. I sing because I'm free. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know he watches me. We're supposed to sing because we are happy. Now, I realize in church, some of you guys that aren't saved or you've never been around this before, I get you singing, the preacher gets you singing, and pretty soon you kind of lose yourself. You were all self-conscious, and you were like, this is dumb, I don't like to sing. And next thing you know, you're starting to get with it, and you're starting to really enjoy these things because they start ministering to your heart. And pretty soon you start getting happy. So I understand the reciprocal is sometimes true. But Solomon here is about to try to work his rear end off because nothing else is working. Look at chapter 2, verse 4. And he says, I made me great works. I builded me houses, not one, many. I planted me vineyards, not one, many. You know they were the best houses. You know with Solomon and all his money, they're the biggest vineyards of the finest grapes. They'd have to be. I made me gardens, plural. Most of us have a garden. And orchards, and I planted trees in them of all kinds of fruit. All kinds. That's a big garden. That's a big orchard. I made me pools of water. Those are called lakes. To water there with the wood. So he had to import water to grow the trees he's planting. I got me servants, maidens, born in my house, great possessions of great and small cattle. Now he's a cattle rancher. Above all, he's got more cows than anybody. Where do you think we hear about cattle on 1,000 hills? This guy's got lots of cows. They gave me silver and gold and the peculiar treasure of kings and of provinces. He goes on and on of all he did in labor. When it comes to carpentry, architecture, masonry, he's been there, he's done that. And I admit there's a satisfaction in any builder. Just ask anybody. We invited Pastor Ron down here because he understands a kind of a lost art of building and wood structure. And there's great satisfaction in working with your hands. I like that. But if you're trying to go to your wood shop to become happy, I'm not saying woodworking can't make you happy. I'm saying that if you're sad, you're depressed, and you think working a job is going to make you happy, it won't do it. Turn quickly to 1 Kings chapter 4. How much time do I got? Great. What time? Anybody know?
12:11.
Huh?
12:11.
12:11? Oh, hallelujah. Got a minute. All right. I bought a clock to put up there. Said I would never do it, but I did. 1 Kings. Look at this verse real quick. 1 Kings chapter 4. Turn back to the left. Boys, don't miss this. 1 Kings chapter 4. That's why we have you memorize where your books are so you can get there quick in church. 1 Kings chapter 4. Houses, orchards, aqueducts. Besides all that, his capstone was the glorious temple, the first temple. The most magnificent building ever built. Most expensive building ever built. Nothing like it today, never will be. The Taj Mahal is nothing. It's like a tree house compared to it. Walls lined with gold, furniture lined with gold. 1 Kings chapter 4. Not only that, you can see other things he did here in 1 Kings. Look at chapter 4. Let's start in verse 21 maybe. 1 Kings 4, 21. And Solomon reigned over all the kingdoms from the river unto the land of the Philistines and unto the border of Egypt. They brought presents and served Solomon all the days of his life. Solomon's provision for one day. And we have a pretty big food bill here with our boys, but watch his. 30 measures of flour, 60 measures of meal, 10 fat oxen, 20 ox every day. They ate 10 oxen. His household. 100 sheep every day. That's how many they had to kill for dinner. That's a lot of chefs. You with me, Trent? And 100 sheep besides hearts. There's your rabbits, roebucks, and fallow deer, and fatted fowl. He had dominion over all, and on he goes. You keep reading down there, you'll find out. Oh, drop down about verse number 26. Solomon had 40,000 stalls of horses for his chariots that he built. You know, Jay Leno and some of these guys have, a garage full of 10 or 20 or 30 or 40 really beautiful cars. He had 40,000 cars, chariots. It just goes on and on. Verse 29. God gave Solomon wisdom, understanding exceeding much, largest of heart, even as the sand is on the seashore. There's just no end to it. Look at 1 Kings chapter 9. Turn to the right. We're headed back to Ecclesiastes to end. 1 Kings chapter 9. Look at this. Now, I was raised in boats. I love boats. My mom and dad always made sure we had a boat. And I've had a bunch of boats. And I like taking kids out in boats. And I guarantee you, if I won $1 million, one of the first things I'd buy would be a boat big enough to put all my boys in. I just love boats. I share them. I use them with my people, my kids. That's how I have fun. I'm never selfish with them, but I love boats. But watch what Solomon did. Solomon didn't have a boat. He didn't even have a yacht. Okay, rich people always show, that rich people have these massive boats, these yachts. Look what Solomon had. 1 Kings 9, what he built in his labor. Before I learned Pastor Ron, we come down here, we were going to learn timber framing. I I come that close. I was still sick, and I still couldn't come down and work full time. So I was going to enroll. In fact, I just passed my enrollment date. I was going to enroll in a boat building school, the boat building school in the United States, which is out in Bremerton, Washington. It's a 9-month course where you pick. There's 3 9-month courses where you can pick little boats and middle-sized boats and then the big yacht-sized boats. Because I just wanted to build my own boat. And Pastor Ron says, fine, we'll build a boat. So, all right. 1 Kings chapter 9, look at verse 26. Boys, don't miss what I'm trying to show you. There's no need for you to repeat the mistakes of someone else. Not yours, not mine, not his, not his. There's no reason to. Learn from our mistakes. If you had $1 billion, it wouldn't make you happy. 95% of all people who win the lottery, it destroys them. And they are broke within 12 months. 95%, that's pretty sure bet. Look at 1 Kings chapter 9, verse 26. And King Solomon made a navy of ships. I get a boat, a little one. He gets a navy that he builds. And he's the innkeeper. What I'm saying is, guys, in verse 27, Hiram sends the navy. On and on it goes. Been there, done that. He tried labor. Let's go see what it did for him. Ecclesiastes. Surely, hard work can make you happy. Now, boys, if there's anything that you can misinterpret at my ranch, this is it. Because I hate lazy with a passion. We got a rule at the ranch for everybody. You guys, I don't know if you're being taught this. If I ain't sitting, you ain't sitting. That's the rule. If I can stand, you can stand. If I'm on my feet working, you are too. I catch you sitting when I'm working, you might as well be doing push-ups or running miles because it isn't going to happen. You know what I'm trying to do? Keep you employed. You go to a job site and you don't have anything to do and your hands are like this in your pocket and the boss shows up, he don't need you. You better, by God, and I mean that respectfully, have a broom in your hand if there's nothing else to do. 2/3 of you, I would never pay you a wage. Never actually pay you a wage. And there's 1/3 of you I would happily hire and pay a wage. And I hope all of you are in that top third before you leave. But labor, it's easy to interpret labor, being a hard worker. I could pick on a couple guys in here, I mean in a good way. How can we smile at Big back there? He's hiding from me now. Schwab. Schwab, we love Schwab, don't we? How many guys love Schwab? One of the hardest workers I ever had. What have you gained? 60 pounds here?
More than that.
Huh?
70.
70. Schwab was 70 pounds lighter than his frail frame there. He's been with me 3 years. Hardest worker we got. He can work any of our boys and most of our men under the table. Okay? But Schwab hid behind his hard work for many years here. And we bypassed, because he's such a hard worker, we bypassed all the weightier things, the spiritual things, some of the integrity things. And he's pulling up nicely with those now. But it's easy to fool me with hard work, because that's where I'm focused. Okay? You can't fool Mama T with that. Because she's like a bloodhound sniffing out the rest of it. But I do. I respect hard work so much, it's easy to miss the other things. And hard work alone will not make you happy. It will not please God. Look, if you will. He says, I tried labor. Verse 9, I was great, increased more. He found out it was still not satisfying. I better hurry, I gotta be done. So he tries learning, then laughter, then liquor, then labor. So he says, okay, fine. I've worked, using my wisdom. I'm sober now. I'm just going to kick back in retirement. He tries luxury. Look at this. This is all chronological. Look at chapter 2, verse 8. I gathered me silver and gold. Well, if you work, gentlemen, you will too. If you will work hard, this is what I hate about drugs. It isn't that you guys all like to get high. It's you like that quick money. You know how I know that? Because when kids on Facebook post, they don't post their paraphernalia, their pipes, their trash, their needles. They post handfuls of $100 bills. Because you're covetous. You want what you want without working for it. That quick money. Go out in the morning, come back with $500, $1,000, $2,000. And all the other saps are working for a month for that same amount of money.
Yeah.
Well, how many, by the way, this is another sermon, but how many kids did you have to destroy to pack home that money? I have one of my boys from here, maybe he's watching right now. I says, how much money did you go through your hands during this year and a half you were backsliding, dealing drugs? He said, Pastor, $500,000.
Wow.
$500,000 in Kansas City. I says, how much profit did you make? He said, about 50. If I couldn't make $50,000 in a year and a half using my brain and my two strong arms, I'd quit. He says, how much you got now? He says, I'm in debt. Why? Because I used my drugs. So I got hooked on my own stuff. Well, why do you got to try that again? Why do you got to try to be the exception to the rule? The rule says it won't work. And if it did, God wouldn't be pleased with it anyway. So he says, I know. I worked, and I worked, and I worked, and I worked, and I worked. And the result of work is money. If you save it, you're wise, and a wise man will save some. He'll be able to stack up a whole bunch of gold bars. And he does. So now he says, fine, I'm just going to sit back and I'm going to retire. You know why people work today? They work to retire because they think they'll be happy. You know what most retired people do? They die. You've worked until you're 60, 65, and then you quit and you die of a heart attack. It's too much of a shock to your system, I guess. Man, who wants to work for 50 years or 40 years thinking they're going to be happy when they finally get to go down to Tahiti and sit under a palm tree for a while? Why wouldn't you want to be happy from the beginning to the end of this thing called life? Now watch. He says, I'm going to try luxury. I mean, as an experiment. I gathered me silver and gold and the peculiar treasures of kings and of provinces. I got me men singers and women singers, and the delights of the sons of men as musical instruments, and that of all sorts. Name the instrument. He's got it. The money, he's got it. The women, he's got it. So I was great and increased more than all that were before me in Jerusalem. And again, I say that's cumulatively. Also my wisdom remained with me, and whatsoever, watch this, mine eyes desired. Can you imagine being a billionaire? A multi-billionaire. What Bill Gates and these guys, what could they want? Whatever they want, they just go get it. They got more money coming in interest than the rest of you and I will make in a lifetime. Once you hit this critical mass, he says, whatsoever mine eyes desire. Now here, boys, this is what you think would make you happy. To be able to have whatever you want. Look at it. Your parents are standing in the way from what you wanted. So you bullied past them. You ran away. You stole. You cheated. You did everything in God's earth to get what you wanted. You know, the Bible says, in Psalms, he says, God will give you sometimes the request of your heart, but he'll send leanness into your soul.
Yeah.
You know what you learn from that? Getting what you want doesn't satisfy you. Getting what you need does. Being content what you have does. So he tries luxury as an experiment. He says, I withheld not my heart from any joy, for my heart rejoiced in all my labor, and this was my portion of all my labor. Then I looked on all the works that my hands had wrought, on the labor that I labored to do, and behold, watch, all was vanity and vexation of spirit. There was no profit under the sun. All the money in the world. He's like Scrooge McDuck. You guys ever watch that cartoon? He's counting his pennies or dimes every day. He's the grumpiest cartoon on TV. Right? He's never happy. Wonder why? Because money and luxury can't do it. So he tries luxury. The opposite of hard work is living in the lap of luxury. Any meal you want, any food you want, it won't do it. Finally, he tries one more. The last L is lust. He just gives himself completely over to hedonism, all the baser instincts. All of these still are in the realm of respectability. The learning, the laughter, even the liquor. Churches and Christians think that's okay now. Labor, luxury. All of of these are okay. He finally falls off the edge into the immoral zone. And he says, fine, I am not happy. I'm just going to have all the immoral sexual relationships a man could possibly afford. Look, if you will, at this is where you're going to need 1 Kings 11 here in a moment. 1 Kings 11, he tries lust. He says, well, laughter, learning, liquor, luxury, labor, none of that work. How about lust? If only I had the right woman, I'd be happy. Better looking women, different nationalities of women, social status, economic standing. We live in a sex-crazy age, boys. Most addictive thing today isn't drugs, it's pornography and sex. We can get stuff out of your body, we can't get stuff out of your head. I can get your bloodstream clean. Can't do anything about that. Can't do anything about those images up there. Sex, crazy age. Look at 1 Kings 11 and I'll be through. 1 Kings 11, to the left. He finally goes away from the whole once married, happily, ever after, till death do you part, moral of the good Jewish family he came from. And in 1 Kings chapter 11, verse 1. But, the but becomes because he did a lot of good things and had a lot of good things. But, King Solomon loved many. Here's the understatement of the world. Many strange women. Proverbs, he talks to you about strange women. Chapter 5, chapter 6, chapter 7. There's lots of verses for young men about women, written by the same man. How can he tell you in chapter 7 to avoid that girl? Don't pass by her house. Don't go out at night. Don't let her perfumes take you in. Don't let her eyelids trip you up. How can he tell you that? What does he know? He had 1,000 strange wives. Strange women. Watch. Verse number 3. Well, verse 2, let's read it. Of the nations concerning which the Lord said to the children of Israel, you should not go into them. Oh, he has girls from lost families. Non-Christians, as it were. Neither shall they come in unto you, for surely they will turn away your heart after their gods. What? You know what's going to take you away from the Lord? A girl. A girl who don't want you to have your God. Who doesn't want your morals, doesn't want your ethics, doesn't want your plans, doesn't want your future, doesn't want your commitments, not going to let you raise your kids in church. She'll take you back to her gods. Now watch. He had, Solomon clave to these in love. He had 700 wives. Not just any wives, princesses, daughters of kings, 300 concubines. And notice this. This is part of how we know his wives turned away his heart. I got a wife who doesn't turn away my heart from God. In fact, she makes me want to be a better Christian, better husband, better pastor, better man. Is that your girl? Is that your girl? Does she make you want to love God more? If you think you are impervious and you're going to be the exception and your girl cannot turn away your heart from your God, you're a fool. You might as well come with me to the welding shop, pick up a hunk of hot steel, prove to me how you're the exception. Been there, done that. He had a harem. You know, they always show that in the Lawrence of Arabia type movies, you know, where all these big sheiks out in the wilderness have a harem of women, as if a lot of them would be great. One would be tough. No. He had blondes, redheads. They were tall, they were short, they were rich, they were brown, they were yellow, they were white. He had every kind of woman possible. Let's wrap this up. Ecclesiastes 2. There's a ton of verses of Proverbs. I'm skipping them because we don't have time. You know what he wrapped up his book of Proverbs of wisdom in? What's the chapter he wrapped it up with? Proverbs 30 what? 31. who can find a virtuous woman? He had 1,000 women. One Shunammite. One out of 1,000. Ecclesiastes chapter. So he tries sex, tries lust. You know what he says in verse 17? Let me just show you one more verse. Ecclesiastes 2:17. After all of this experiment in the laboratory of life, he says, therefore I hated life. I just hated it. Didn't want to live another. I've tried it all. I've tasted it all. I've smelled it all. I've had it all. I've done it all. I've seen it all. I'm done! Now, we don't have time to get to it, but if you'll read Ecclesiastes chapter 12, you'll see that he finally comes back to the God of his youth. He tells the young man, we better turn there. He tells the young man, he says, you need to seek your Creator, verse 1 of chapter 12. Remember now thy Creator, boys, in the days of thy youth, while the evil days come not, he saw them, nor the years draw nigh, they got to him, when they shall say, I have no pleasure in them. He says, someday, you're going to be like me. Verse 13, let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God, keep his commandments. This is the whole duty of man. He says, in the end of this whole thing, I had it when I started. There's no place like home. You know something? I don't know if you've seen this preacher. I hadn't until a few years ago. This thing here follows the history of America. This is literally a chronology of our country. The 1800s. Now, of course, we started with God. We started like King Solomon. We're pretty moral, pretty ethical, pretty Judeo-Christian country. Presidents read their Bibles, blah, blah, blah. In the 1800s, we got higher learning. That's where it all started. In the universities, in the college, where all the liberals took over. Then in the 1920s, we got what we call the Roaring 20s. There's your laughter. There's your teeny boppers, your laughter. Then we have the 30s and 40s. Prohibition's been repealed and the country starts rolling in liquor. All over the place. Then we got our, about 1950s, post-World War II. You got our labor, all the industry, all the buildings, all the trains, all the planes, all the labor of our country in the 50s. Then you drop down here about the 80s, all that labor produces the richest country in the world. By the 80s, we're in the lap of luxury. All the billionaires are born. In 1900, there was only one billionaire in the world. By the 80s, there's billionaires galore. Then you get down here to the 90s and where we're at now, the 2000s. And what do we have? Sex perversion. Homosexual marriage. Transgender things. Boys and girls don't know which bathroom to use. Pornography pouring out. The biggest industry on the internet is pornography. We've gone through Solomon's experiment. Our country has experimented with all the same things. And here we are at the end. And I'm hoping at the end we get in Ecclesiastes 12 where our country wakes up and says, we had it. There was no place like home. Had it all along in God. Let's stand for prayer. All I'm saying is, boys, learn from our mistakes. I started off by asking you if you had all the money, all the power, all the time. Nobody could tell you no. What would you do today? What would you buy? What would you do? If you're not happy with what you have today, there's no happiness for you tomorrow with more. Our boys deal with depression. Some of them come here after suicide attempts and cutting on themselves. And I bet you Solomon was a cutter. He had enough. I hated life until he found out he had it from a little boy. If you're not saved, you don't have life. Jesus says, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father but by me. If you're not born again, you need to get saved. There will be no happiness for you. You might get high, you might get drunk, you might get distracted for a little while with college or a job. Maybe you'll even get some money together and you can buy some more happiness. It's not going to be real. Not going to be real without God. Our heads are bowed, our eyes are closed for just a moment. Some of you guys are 14, 15, 16, going on 25. You've already done things that I hadn't thought of when I was 30. You're living too fast, too hard, too harsh. Stop. Stop. Stop while you still can. Junior high kids having sex. Are you kidding me? High school guys. Some of you guys got money hidden at home from drugs. Children still suffering. Some dead perhaps from the drugs you dealt. You stinking wretch. Solomon already told us 3,000 years ago, none of this would make you happy. You know, isn't that what you want? Just to be happy. Father, bless this invitation, I pray. Save the lost. Help the saved to turn this around. Go with our brother, our Lord Loyal, as he goes back to Houston. Father, help him not to fix what's not broken, and help him, God, to remember wisely all the different roads he need not try again. The altar's open. If God's opened your heart, you come. We're singing all to thee. I surrender. I surrender all. What page is that? 394. The altar's open. Come on. You've already tried it. Why don't you come down here and just say, God, help me never go down that road again. All to Jesus. If you're coming here this morning and you're not saved, you need someone to pray with you. Raise your hand. We'll get somebody to you. You need to get saved before it's too late. We got boys been here 3, 4, 5, 6 months and I don't think are saved. You've not come to the end of this thing called self yet. You come. The altar's open. You come. God speak to your heart. You come.